Paper goods. I do like the idea of paper goods because I do hot cereals or primarily that thing that I counsel for breakfast and lunches and dinners or soups or stews. I put up a ton of bowls. They used to be paper bowls, now they're styrofoam bowls, but I put up thousands of those guys. Just an easy way. That's why then when I come back to when those run out, I either like a larger cup, a 24-ounce mug, or a stainless steel. This is just a pie tin. It's just a stainless steel pie tin, $8. Recipes. How do we take the same things and make them taste different? We're going to get tired of eating the same old stuff. It'll be nice to flip through some cookbooks and come up with some other ideas and other ways to either flavor things or tweak things or do things a little bit different. Now is a great time to go online and gather a bunch of the information that's out there and then make your own binder of different ways and different things that you can do. So travel, GPSs, compasses, right? How many of us have, still carry maps with us? How many of us, when we travel, make sure that we've got a good road map of that area in case we run into a problem? So the bishop in my home ward, he hates to travel anymore. He's just got himself like, man, if I leave here, how the heck am I getting home? He had a son that got married down in San Diego, and he's like, Rusty, I don't want to go. And he said, but this is my plan. This is the route I'm going to take if something happens. This is what I've got with me. Do we have those alternative routes and those things that we can bypass and that we can get around with? We're so used to either pulling our phones out or punching into a GPS and letting that take us where we need to go. If those aren't available, what are we going to do? Do we have those skills and that ability? Emergency housing. Something that we can either put in our backyard, something that's portable. I dare to say that we're in trouble if we can't stay outside in the wintertime here, which I think needs to be a very good tent and something that's got a wood stove in it. It's the only way we're going to be able to make do. So what are your plans and how are we going to do those things? Just something to consider. I am a big fan of the large garden wagons that you'll either see at Home Depot or at the nurseries. They'll hold 400 to 500 pounds. I've seen some rated up to 800 pounds. They've got some with tilt beds, but they've got large pneumatic wheels, and they'll go over some rough territory. I can throw a lot of resources in there, pull that sucker behind me. And so particularly if we've just got to take what we can carry, that's a great option. I like a bicycle with one of the kids' carts behind it. They've not done a very good job with wagons for those. I've not seen a wagon that can be pulled behind a bike that will hold more than about 100, 110 pounds. I've got some friends that bought 2 or 3 different ones. Nothing's been perfect out there. Those bike carriers work as well as anything else. To throw kids in, get the ones that hold 2 people. You can always put kids in there, but you put a lot of resources in there, head on down the road and cover a lot more territory. Fuel, we've talked about that. If you put up fuel, got to make sure you've got stable in it. PRI stable is the only one that I've seen that if added at a year completely refreshes that. Most of the other, it's a one-shot deal, but PRI has told me over and over, no really, Rusty, put that in the year, at a year, it will completely refresh that. It's good for another year. Evacuation spots, what are your plans? Yes?
Did you sell that PRI?
I do. Yeah, we've got both the gas and the diesel. And that's the only reason I brought it in, because it is something that they just vow over and over. It will refresh it. It's like 275 gallons, so it does more than most of the others. It's 20 or 21 bucks, 1920.
Rated better than that stable stuff.
Yes.
Oh.
Yep.
Fuel treatment.
Yeah, it's a fuel treatment. So I've got a friend of mine, and if you walk into his kitchen, you open up his cabinets, he's got different evacuation lists. I got all day and I can take the truck and trailer. He just has to pull out his sheet and do what it says. He's already thought it through, these are the things I gather. You got half a day and you can only take the car. You got an hour and you can take the car. You got an hour and you can only take what you've got on your back. You got a half an hour and you can only take what's on your back. You throw this out. You only carry 2 guns with you. What are you going to take? Have we thought about that? Or you stand there looking at the gun safe going, dang, well, you know, weight becomes an issue. What are you going to take? What are you going to do? So option to look at. These are things to consider. So we talk about an evacuation spot. What's that plan? Might be the backyard, might be the first place. So something happens to the house, we're going to meet in the backyard. We're then going to meet at a neighbor's house if it's within a block of a problem. We're someplace a mile or 2 away. We're someplace out of our town in case there's an issue. And then who's somebody outside of the state that will know where you're at, that you'll try to contact and pass the information back and forth on. So what are those different plans and what are those things that we're looking to do? Backpack, I'm a huge fan of backpacks. Carry a lot more on your back. Keep my hands free rather than me trying to bundle and lug things. Just something to consider. Okay, around the house items. In New York City, they found that if there was a trash truck strike, for 3 days, it would take them 3 months to get back up on top of the rat and rodent population. 3 days, it exploded. So what are we going to do? How are you going to take care? People aren't having their garbage hauled off. What are they going to do? I got burn barrels sitting on my yard. I know exactly what I'm going to do with my stuff, but a lot of people are going to be dumping it. What are they doing with their sewage and those type things? They're going to be dumping it. All of a sudden you got feral cats and feral dogs. So how are we going to take care of the pest control? Flies will become an issue also. So something to look at. So when we're looking at pests, I'll say this in this group, I can't say this in a lot, we're talking about 2- and 4-legged animals, right? How are we going to deal with the problems that are out there? Something to work on, something to consider and think about now. Heating. Don't have a wood stove, you're in trouble. I mean, that really is the way to go. Everything else, now you're heating a room. Wood stove, you heat a house or a trailer or whatever there is. Any house I've lived in up here had a chimney put in and put a wood stove. My home right now has 2 wood stoves in it. One's built wide enough that I can put a kitchen stove next to it, tee them off, and if I'm cooking I can use this one. If I'm heating that upstairs area I can use this one. Try turning the fans off on them and seeing how well they heat. What else can you do? I have actually found that I went and got some screen, some heavy-duty stainless screen that's, I don't even know what I want to call it. There are holes in it that would probably be the size of pencil lead. Some are a little bit bigger than that. Lets a lot more of the heat out. If I actually open my wood stove door without the fan running, damper it down so there's some smoke still going out. I don't want smoke coming in the room. I get a lot more heat back into that room.
Radiant heat.
Yep. So those are things to look at and to consider. We all think best case scenario, oh man, my fan blows me out of there. But what are we going to do? I sell the Goal Zero solar generator. And one of the first things I did was ran that to see on a fan. Will it run the fans that are on there? Will it take a secondary fan where all that heat's going to rise up to the roof and blow it across somewhere? Perfect things to look at and figure out. Yes, ma'am.
They sell fans that you can put on top of your stove that are heat powered.
Yeah, it just depends on if people come in your store and drop them, how efficient they work, and what they'll do for. We sell a couple of different versions. So they've got one that's 7,500 or 75 cubic feet, and the other one's 150. And they just sit on the back corners. It's taken actually the cold air draft with the heat that powers those. I have 3 of them running on my wood stoves. I don't run my fans at home. I run it to start the fire, and then they do the rest of it all day long. So, heating, rock and roll. Touch lights, candles, those speak for themselves. There are so many great lights that are out there anymore that are solar lights that I really like those. But the touch lights are just nice to have. Gives you light when you want it, punch it off. Walk into a room, I got it, boom, done, off and running. 3 years ago, the number one cost-saving device that was put in any businesses throughout the world that saved more money than anything else they implemented were automatic on and off lights. And that's why you see those being done more in warehouses and those type things. Just a huge savings. So the idea of me being able to just turn that on when I need it, turn it off, is a great item to have. I have really liked, normally I'm not a big fan of batteries, but I have really liked these lines. They make 3 or 4 different lights. It's something I take off and use as a flashlight. It's something that I can hang up or I can hang on the back side. It uses 4 AA batteries, which are very simple and very easy to go through and recharge. So I've been a really big fan of these guys. I took a dozen of these home. Simple, easy. There's a couple of levels to them. From the SOS, I think that this one's rated at over 100 hours on using those. So easy, put in my rooms. While we're talking about that, just as a recharger, Goal Zero, of all the rechargers out on the market, this is my favorite. So this is using basically a 7-watt solar panel, and it is capturing the power in this 4 AA batteries. What I like about this, and they're changing these, and I'm afraid they're going to discontinue this as the old model. The new model, this is a solid unit, and you can't get into it. But what I like about this is I can actually recharge those batteries, and I could take these suckers out and put them in anything else that I want to. So now I've got 4 rechargeable batteries. I can put them in my headlamp, my walkie-talkies, whatever else. Throw 4 dead ones in and let these guys charge up for me. Yes, ma'am.
Would that charge other brand of rechargeable AA's?
Anything. Any AA's, and there's actually a little baffle that fits in here. AA's and AAA's.
How much
Yes.
do those run?
They're $119 right now. Come in and we've got all of our Goal Zero stuff is 10% off. The other thing that these guys have done, there is a little light that they have put on the front of this guy to use. I have liked this little guy here because then I could set that down and I can read by that or do whatever else I'm going to do. And so it's just a secondary little light that they do put out and make. So I like these, and because of that, convinced me, okay, this is the cat's meow. Just the amount of light that it gives off rather than a bunch of candles and those type things. Questions on lighting?
Is that the lantern a Goal Zero
No,
product too?
no, this is Revere, or it's US, I think it's US Survivor. They go by 2 or 3, but Revere's another company of them. They've got about 6 different lights that fit in that category. They've got 3 that run off AA's. Telephones, when I turned my power off, one of the things that I caught on was if the power's off, the electric lines are still charged. They still have juice in them, but you've got to have the old telephone that doesn't plug into the wall anywhere. It just has the telephone jack. There's enough juice in there, it'll cause those phones to ring and allow you to use those. If you've got a typical plug-in phone that's going into a jack, you can't call in or call out on that. So I would look around and grab a couple of those. If you can find them still out there, find them at the thrift stores, wherever, put them up. It's a good option and a good item to have.
Can you clarify what you're talking about?
So just the phones from 20 years ago that did not have to, all the new phones have to plug into an outlet somewhere
Oh, right.
and to run them. The old ones didn't need that. There's enough juice running through the telephone lines that caused those to ring. And so you can pick them up and you can readily use those where nobody else will be able to use them. Because if their phone has to go plug in, try and plug in your phone at home. You can't dial in or out on it. Walkie-talkies, big fan of walkie-talkies. I'm in the M in 8th Ward. Our bishop asked everybody in our ward to get a walkie-talkie Chargeables that sit right next to your bed. So I looked around and wanted to make sure that not only was it a chargeable one, but that I could put batteries in it also. And we all turn them to channel 8. It says if there's a problem, turn that sucker on. Every hour, he will go ahead and give any information out that he needs. So it's a real quick, easy way for us in a general, localized area to be able to pass information out. Now, my wife stays home and I'm out working. We've got contact back and forth within 1 to 5 miles. I know a lot of them say they'll do it a lot more than that, but you got to hold your tongue just right and stand on your tippy toes and everything else. So play with those. I like the Walkie Talkies and the ability to communicate. Alarm clocks, if we're still on a timer, do we have the alarm clocks that will get us up and let us move and groove and do our thing? Work gloves, knee pads, dust masks, anything where we're back doing things by hand again. Do we have those protective items that we have? Plastic sheeting. Now we've got to cover something. Do we have the plastic sheeting? Do we have the 2x4s? Do we have the plywood? Do we have whatever it's going to take to try to mend, whether it's a tree that went through something, whether it was wind, whether it was whatever, to go ahead and board things back up and provide some protection. I had one guy that was, and I'm not sure what you'd call it, but it's the little heavier gauge that they'll use in concrete that are the squares. What's that called? It's sheeting and they'll roll them out, and I've seen him do it in a lot of commercial applications. He got that and he said, well, what happens, Rusty, if I just need a quick way to put something up over a window to stop somebody coming in? It's a thought. Something to be able to put up, something to secure a door or something like that with. Tarps, huge fan of tarps. I don't know that there are many times I go to Sam's Club or Costco and I'll grab a couple of their tarps and just haul them home. I've made a number of expedited shelters with them. Whenever I have gone to any of the camps and set up things, I run tarps off to a slope. I'm a big fan of like those garage ports that you can buy. They run about $300. I want to say Costco was doing some, that $249 included all the sides to it. Well, then I will also take off the slope and I'll run out again another 8 or 10 feet out, and that's all storage space underneath. The other thing it does is if wind comes up, it's not hitting a solid wall. I've got a slope out and it just sheds everything off of them. So it's a great protection all the way around on those guys. Tools, shovels, axes, picks, sewing needles, thimbles. Now all of a sudden we're having to go through. How many of your wives at home have patches for their jeans? The old iron-on patches or something you can sew on? Growing up as a kid, that's what we did. What do we do now? We throw it away and we grab another pair, right? Well, how do we take, if we can't get that other pair, what are those basic things that we need to do to repair the clothing and the things that we've got? What are either some of the cloth tapes that are out there or the ways to seal things up? Preparedness, written plan of action, solar chargers. How many of you guys have something at home that you bought a year ago for preparedness and you've never taken it out of the box to see if it works? Right? Do you know that during Y2K,
You told me it would work.
Yeah, I know. That's what you get for listening to me. Y2K, a third of the generators that were sold for Y2K were defective. There was such a huge demand that they went to 24 hours pumping things out. A third of them didn't work. Everybody thought they worked, right? Nobody pulled them out of the boxes to see. They bought gas, they had the generator, man, they were ready to rock and roll. A lot of us have things, we've got to take it out, we've got to test it, we've got to see. It's not a dumb idea to pretend like you turn your power off for a week and you go through and you cook on the stoves, you figure out how you're going to heat your house without that little button, you figure out what you're going to do with water, how you're going to shower, toilets, the whole ball of wax. Kind of get a feel on that whole game plan there. Cash on hand. How much cash is enough cash? That's up to you. I go back to a couple of stories. My sister was robbed. They stole her purse, stole her identity, drained her bank account, and the bank was so nice because my mom was a signer on her account. They linked my mom's account over, and these guys walked away with $60,000. Right? Well, what did the bank do to my sister? Shut everything down. She couldn't get a penny out of her account. Nothing. 2 weeks, she couldn't get a penny out. She didn't have some cash, she was in trouble. Well, what are we going to do? Cancun and Cozumel got hit with a hurricane about 9 years ago. 3,500 Americans were stranded there. Hotels kicked them out. Restaurants kicked them out. So how are they paying for everything? Right there. Didn't have any of that stuff with them. My wife always gives me a bad time. What on earth are you bringing so much cash for? Not going to get stuck. Don't plan on that happening. When we travel, I take all the basics. I buy a knife as soon as I get there if we're not checking luggage. I got things to start fires with. I've got water filters. I've got a map of the area with a plan that we're going to either go here or here or here. You know, it's worth making that plan and figuring out what we're going to do. How much cash is enough cash? Totally up to you, but I'd make sure that I've got some. Don't just store it or replenish it. We've got to come up with this idea a little bit. We get caught up that we just got to have our own little basket, man. And this is my little basket, you know, and we're always doing this. And we gather, and now we've got it, now we're going to use it. How long is that going to last? Nobody knows. How do we replenish that? Do we have the ability to grow the stuff that we need? Do we have the tools that we need to fish or to hunt? How are we going to continue? How am I going to go get more firewood? You know, what are those things? What are my plans? So let's figure out what we're going to do with that. Bartering. I really believe in the bartering system. Sooner or later, that money's not going to be worth the doggone thing. I'll tell you what, if it goes bad, you can walk into my store and say, okay, Rusty, I want that, that, and that. You can slap gold down, you can slap silver down, you can put $100 bills down. If I don't have a way to trade that off, it means nothing to me. I won't give you anything for any of it. You walk in with 2 chickens and say, okay, what will you give me? Now we're talking. Bring me a bushel of potatoes, now we're talking. What are those things? And you don't have to put a lot of money out in it. I tell people, go to the dollar store. Walk around the dollar store and just go up and down the aisles and look at it and go, what value would that have? You don't tie up a whole lot of money in it, but could somebody need that? Is that a necessity down the road? Grab them and put them up. Get a wide variety of things, 5 or 10 things that you plan on, and then you've got something that you can barter with, because it may not always be just one thing. Guns and ammunition. Do I really need to discuss that one?
Probably not around here.
Fishing equipment, traps, important papers. Put those papers together. You know, do you have them? Do you have extra copies? As dumb as it sounds, you're not supposed to do it, but my wife and I went and made a colored copy of our passport. And I carry that whenever we travel internationally with me, but it carries someplace separate than where I've got my passport. If my passport gets lost, I can pull it out. I always have my driver's license, but that passport is more recognized throughout the world than just my driver's license will be. So do I have some of those things to say who and what we are? We lived in Tucson before I moved up here. We'd go down to Mexico scuba diving. I had a daughter that loved the sun, and she was just as dark as anybody out there. Well, I had a friend come up to me that worked at the border, and he said, I need you to understand, Rusty, you need to be very careful. Border, this is 25 years ago, but on the Mexican side of the border, they are stopping Americans, and if they can't prove those children are theirs, they retain those children. And what I see happening is either a husband staying back with those kids on that side of the border, and the wife tries to go get pictures and documentation. So do you have something that says they're yours? Pictures over the years to say, look, I've got pictures. As dumb as it sounds, we may get in a situation where you've got to prove that they're your kids, that they're your family, that that's your wife, that that's your husband. Libraries. Right now we jump online. driving down the road, Google something, however it is. Do we have the libraries? Are we putting up the books and the resources? I would encourage you once a week. I have no crystal ball to tell you when this is going to happen, but once a week I would research something online and say, what are all the different uses I can use baking soda for? Print them off. Put them in a book. What are natural antibiotics that are out there? Print them off. Put it in the book. How do I dig and make an outhouse? Print it off. Put it in a book. Look at all the different possible scenarios that are out there. How would I make my own meat drying rack? How would I really dry meat? And what's the proper technique to do that? How do I properly cure meat? How would I salt something? How much salt do I need to put it in a brine to actually be able to cure something and to take care of it? You're able to then do some research and put together your own preparedness book on things that come to your mind without a bunch of the other junk that sits out there. Medications. Most doctors will write you a script. I've not had one turn me down yet. When I go into my dentist, I say, need painkiller, need antibiotics. Write me as many refills as you will. I go into my orthopedic surgeon, I need muscle relaxants, I need painkillers, I need antibiotics. Thank you very much. They know exactly what I'm doing for them. I go fill them up and I vacuum pack them. By vacuum packing those items, you've removed the oxygen from them and they almost don't deteriorate at all. Now, I watched a documentary about 6 months ago. They took 15 of the most common medicines that are used on the market that all had an expiration date of 1 to 2 years on them. Only one of them truly expired at its expiration date, and that was Retin-A, a medicine that's used for acne and stuff. Everything else was estimated to have about a 15-year shelf life on it. Now, the potency in some of those cases might diminish. You remove the oxygen, they're not breaking down. They will last a long, long, long time. Just make sure that you write down everything that's in that. My pain meds, they're marked completely down. So my wife gives me a bad time. She says, if anybody ever breaks into our house, we're in trouble. Because now I've got all these vacuum packed strips of 10 Oxycontin or oxycodone or hydrocodone or whatever it is with exactly what's listed on it. She goes, they're going to think you're a drug dealer. I was like, honey, I'm going to be in trouble for that. Just guns, ammo, and everything else that's down here. I'm going to be paid to this crazy guy anyway, so such is life. So how are you going to clean things? I really think a lot of people overlook that. But how are we going to wash things? How are we going to sanitize things? I meant to grab a pound of it. It's a pool shock, but there's a right chemical equation with that pool shock. It'll treat 15,000 gallons of water, but it is powdered Clorox. I can take that in a measured amount and make a gallon of Clorox, and I can sanitize things. I can sanitize outhouses, restrooms, myself if I need to be, depending on where I'm at, rags, towels, the whole ball of wax, and keep ourselves safe. With the water, you can drink that. Yep, just simply because that is sanitizing 15,000 gallons of water, 1 pound of it. Hand cleaners, there again, what are we going to do to just keep things? That's one of the biggest problems after any natural or man-made disaster is the sanitation aspect. More people typically die after the fact than they die from what that problem was, whatever it created, just simply because of the conditions that they're living in. Burn barrels, outhouses, shade, first aid, all-weather gear, bedding, clothing. How many of us are going to lose some weight if things go bad and we're not eating like we are now, right? Do we have belts? Do we have suspenders? Do we have the things that are going to help us to do what needs to be done? It's nice to take a belt and have to put a new hole in that thing. Inward direction, not the outward direction.
That would be nice.
You know, shoes, there again, do we have the things to repair them? Do you have the goop? Do you have the other things that all of a sudden the sole is coming off? Do you have those things? You can't run down to Tom's Shoe Repair all the time and have him fix them. Do you have those components to fix those things? Duct tape only goes so far. So it's just important to have those. Do you guys have any questions? I'm going to run through a few of these, and I've got about 15 more items to cover that aren't on your list. Yes.
Comment on the water. Do you look for a certain type, in your opinion, as far as the water purification and that chlorine? And you're avoiding like dyes and tries for algae and algicide and things
You
like
know,
that.
typically we want water that's moving.
Mhm.
I want to settle my water out after the fact. So in other words, if I'm never going to take a water filter to the water, the only way I'm going to do that is if I'm traveling. If I need water and I've got to go to the Snake River, I'm loading up with some guys and we're just going to take empty containers. I'm going to take 6-gallon buckets, as many of them as I can get. I might have X amount of barrels. Right now we've got 55-gallon open head barrels. They're used. They had glass beads in them. $27. I'll throw those on a trailer. We're going to fill those up. I'm going to bring them home. I'll let it settle overnight. What's going to happen is all the mud and sludge and sand's going to settle to the bottom. The highest concentrations of oils, gases, and pesticides are going to be on the very top. I'm going to ladle off that top inch. The less junk I run through my filter, the better off I am. Then I'm going to filter all the way down to that mud and sludge. I'm not going to run that through. There again, the cleaner the water is that I'm running through, the longer my filters are going to last me. Before I run that through, I'm going to dump it through a coffee filter. We actually were able to make connections. We've got a commercial coffee filter holder. It's a big cone. It sits over a bucket. Drop in your coffee filter. All my water will go through that, and then I'll run it through a filter. So moving water is going to be the best. Always settle your water out, ladle off that top inch, which is going to be the gas, the chemicals, and the pesticides.
On the powdered chlorine, do you look for something specific?
There is. There's only one pool shock that we've been able to find with that combination to it.
That's the calcium hypochlorite? Is that the...
Yeah, it's the amount of that that's in there with the other components. Yep. I mean, the pool shock, it's $6.95, I think, for a pound of it.
What brand is it?
Leslie's is what we sell. I don't advertise it. It's not sitting out. Somebody's got to walk into the store and say, okay, Rusty, I heard you got some powdered chlorine, and we sell it. Yes.
What ratio do you use to say
I've got a
5
paper.
gallons?
I've got a paper at the store, and it's actually a very minimal amount. I think it was less than 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. Makes a gallon of Clorox. Okay, these are some of the other things that didn't fit in there. Sunscreen, hats, insect repellent. We talked about sprouting, journals where you have gone through. So one of the things that I wish I had done, since I've read probably 150, 200 preparedness novels, I really wish I kept a journal with their ideas. Oh man, that's a great idea. Oh, they did this. I really wish I had that. Start doing that today. If you're reading those things, keep track of some of the great ideas that you've run into in there.